how to do this is exactly the challenge that we have in front of us. So, what do we characterize as innovation? Often people put lots of emphasis on aspects of technology, and technology is very important, but I would argue that as important as acquisition of new technologies, and these new technologies may be radical technologies that are new to the world, may be new to the market, new to the specific country that is having access to this new innovation, or new to the firm. So it's a very broad concept of innovation that, particularly in developing countries, it's relevant for us to look into issues that are new to the market and new to the firm. But more than that, the issue of entrepreneurship and how we manage innovation, how we are able to turn ideas into wealth is a very important aspect of the ecosystem of innovation. And the big difference between countries that invest in innovation and those that get really positive results of these investments is exactly those that are able to combine not only the access to technology, but that invest in this entrepreneurship, are able to transform ideas into wealth. So, typically, we try to analyze what are the incentives for productive entrepreneurship, be it the investment climate, the rule of law, protection of intellectual property rights, how the labor market, particularly for skilled labor and for skill upgrading, operates in a country, because the skills, in the end, are going to define the absorptive capacity of a firm and, in the end, of a society to be able to innovate. But also, access to information, and in this area, of course, the ICT revolution has made a major impact, is one of the few examples of technology that we see where leapfrogging has been made possible. Just think of the fact that it took us 100 years to connect the first 1 billion people in the planet to fix wire lines. In just 10 years, we have almost double this level of connectivity through mobile telephony. And over the last 15 years, of course, the internet has changed the way that the economic space is organized and disputed. So, it is true that countries have to pay special attention to their information infrastructure, to their digital literacy, but all of this has also to be put in the context of these broader aspects that I was mentioning in terms of entrepreneurship and access to finance. How are you going to be able to invest in innovation? Where the financing is going to come from? Is the financial sector properly structured to deal with the high-risk type of activities that are often associated with innovation? We all know that investments in R&D are very risky. It's the oldest story. There is a joke that the director of R&D of a big company basically said, well, I know that 50% of my investment in R&D is wasted. If I only knew what 50% is the one that it's wasted, that's the problem, because it's a high-risk initiative. There will be investments that are not going to result in significant outcomes in terms of wealth. But the only way to do this is exactly to experience this path and to create the incentives for firms, society in general, to be willing to take the risk in these innovative activities. Now, these are just some indicators in terms of how different economies, and you'll see that we have the BRICS, we have Korea, we have the US just as a point of reference, and we have Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia as points of reference also in this analysis. So if we look, for instance, issues like incentives, And using estimators like the cost of opening business, you can see that Malaysia actually fares quite well using the doing business indicator, and it's a much more lean economy in terms of the regulatory burden of opening new business. And also, Malaysia does quite well in terms of the recovery rate in relative terms vis-a-vis some other countries like Brazil or India for that matter. Why is this important? Because it's not only from the point of view of innovation in a society, the question of opening a business is also the question of being able to reward risk. And as I just mentioned, this will mean that many firms are going to fail. And if you don't have a regulatory regime, a legal regime that allows the entrepreneur to fail, but to recover part of the costs invest, and then to invest again, you are going to have a much greater challenge in terms of benefiting from innovation. Intellectual property rights. This is a very tricky area because we all know if you strengthen intellectual property rights too much, you are going, of course, to foster rents and not necessarily innovation. But if you have a very weak system of protection of intellectual property rights, the market for knowledge, it's not going to work very efficiently. And it has many implications. For instance, if you go to a multinational corporation and asks, how do you train your young engineers, your technical staff in different parts of the world, you immediately learn that if they are in an environment where intellectual property rights are well protected, they are going to train their engineers in a very different way than if you are in a weaker intellectual property rights environment. Why is that so? Because in the weaker intellectual property rights environment, you are going to expose the trainee to very specific parts of the technology, and only as time goes by and you build trust in the relationship and you are not afraid that the person is going to leave the company, is that you are going to extend the training to a broader array of knowledge of the company. On the other hand, if you are in an intellectual property rights higher level of protection environment, you feel much more comfortable from a legal point of view to expose the engineer, the trainee, immediately to a much broader array of knowledge of the company because you have a mechanism to protect. So where do you draw this line, of course, is tricky. You should not go overboard, but overall, over the last 15 years with the trade-related intellectual property rights agreement type of disciplines, most countries have significantly enhanced the level of protection in the books, the legal aspects. The question of enforcement is a different story. And you can see that Malaysia fares better than some other countries in the region in terms of, and this is just an indicator, with respect to patent protection, but it's still an area that more can be done. When we go, for instance, to skills, and we see how training and the ability of society in general to absorb knowledge, if we look at the enrollments at secondary and tertiary level, excuse me, you can see that Malaysia fares relatively well. But it's not so much the question of the quantity. This is the first step. It's the question of quality that we have to pay specific attention. Just last week, no, actually this week, the PISA results, which is this education analysis that OECD provides, covering something like 50 countries, were released. And they do a test about reading abilities, problem-solving abilities, science and technology, mathematics, knowledge. and rank countries around the world. It's very interesting to see the latest results. They are available at the OECD site. Unfortunately, Malaysia was not covered in this last PISA, but the results are very similar to the ones for Thailand. I look back years behind in other studies, and what you see is that there is a huge difference between what is happening in countries like Korea. In certain areas of China, it's very interesting that the PISA result was applied specifically to the region of Shanghai in China, and OECD countries in general. And then you have Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Thailand, and I'm assuming that if the PISA study were applied to Malaysia, you were going to get more or less in that cluster of middle-income economies. But there is a big difference vis-a-vis the results for countries like Korea and for this specific region of China. And let's make no mistake, China is a huge continent and with very big variations, but actually, number one in the PISA results were the students of Shanghai region in China, above all OECD countries. And Korea also fares very well, as Singapore and the usual suspects. But it's interesting for us to keep special attention not only at the question of quantity, that many middle-income countries nowadays are with very good coverage of schooling, but the question of quality, and particularly the capacity to absorb technology, which can be proxied by this type of results. Information, how you have access to information, the quality of your information infrastructure. As you can see, Malaysia is in the middle ground. It's with numbers more or less similar to the ones that we see for a country like Brazil. Malaysia fares very well when we think in terms of openness of the economy, in terms of exposure to trade, and in this context is one of the most open economies of the world. But in the area of foreign direct investment, as you can see, the participation is still relatively low. So, is this an opportunity? There are things that can be done differently. Of course, there are areas in which FDI is extremely important for Malaysia, but for the economy as a whole, is this an area in which there are new opportunities to be explored? This is something that we will discuss later. Last but not least, access to finance. If you ask companies, is this still a major constraint for your economic activities? And you're going to see that Malaysia is in a situation similar to results for countries like Mexico or Brazil, for that matter. It is much more of a problem, or actually it's much more of a problem in Brazil than in Malaysia, but it's a situation that also merits attention. So these are results that come from the so-called World Bank Investment Climate Surveys. They have to be read with a grain of salt because it's a problem of sample selection, but they are illustrative. For instance, how firms have to spend time in dealing with the regulatory environment and specifically with regulators. In this context, you can see that Malaysia fares relatively well, while countries like Mexico, China, Brazil have a much, let's say, more burdensome regulatory environment. Again, we have to read these numbers carefully because the regulatory environment may be burdensome, but may be very effective in delivering social results. So you have to see what is the outcome, but it's an interesting indicator. Same thing goes, for instance, of how firms are investing in upgrading the skills of its workers. This there are two sides to this coin. On one hand, it's a positive sign showing that the private sector, state-owned enterprise are making a significant effort in contributing, complementing to the educational system. At the same time, it also raises questions about the capability of the educational system to prepare workers for the needs of the marketplace. If we go, for instance, to issues like use of the internet and use of financial sector, how the financial sector is willing to provide financing, you can see where Malaysia fares in relation to the other countries analyzed here. Now, going back to the issue of intellectual property rights, if we look beyond the situation of the own system of intellectual property rights and just ask ourselves, okay, how many innovations in Malaysia or by residents in Malaysia are then patented in the United States, for instance, and we could get similar figures for Japan or for the European communities, and you can see that there is a group of countries, Malaysia, Brazil, Mexico, that have in the neighborhood of 100 patents per year granted by the USPTO. So it's a very small number. Again, as I mentioned before, innovation has many, many dimensions. Patents are just one of the dimensions that we have to look. But see the difference with respect to Korea, for instance. And Korea now, as I already mentioned, ranks among the most aggressive innovators and also countries that are trying to explore intellectual property rights in different markets. So this is something to keep in mind and to see how in 30 years this major difference happened in Korea, something that I will discuss more in a moment. Now, one dimension in the area of innovation that often does not receive much attention, but I would argue is very, very important for innovation to really play a role in terms of wealth creation, is the whole question of management of innovative technology. How you monitor, how you set appropriate targets, how the incentives for good performance inside the firm are properly implemented. And typically developing countries in general have a much more difficult challenge in this area. If we look, for instance, management scores, unfortunately this study does not cover Malaysia, but it gives an idea of the big difference of how firms surveyed in this study rank with respect to their management practices. One thing, however, that it's interesting also to keep in mind is how the world sees the quality of management schools around the world. And there you see that Malaysia is positioned in the 5th place among the more than 100 countries that are analyzed by the World Economic Forum on this criteria. Difference, if we look at the manufacturing sector in a developing country and in an OECD country, like for instance the US, is that the average is not very representative of the distribution, in the sense that, for instance, the Indian manufacturing industry, you have a very fat tail of poorly managed companies that survive in an environment reflecting, be it lack of competition, reflecting the lack of pressure from consumers on quality products. So all of this raises again the question of the importance of management of technology at the firm level, of providing consulting management for innovation and broader management practices. They were able to have a significant impact on productivity over a period of 1 year. And they also helped with the centralization of decision-making and the access to information. So these are just some numbers, and what it shows is that in terms of what could be considered as best practices in the textile industry, 1 month before the intervention, meaning the provision of consulting services, you could see that the lack of information, the fact that managers were not aware of those practices of management to improve innovation and productivity in general, or that they had incorrect information, was quite significant. And the intervention made a difference, and what is interesting in this case is that you had a control panel of firms that you could compare what happened with these other firms where you did not have this intervention. So, once again, it's just to point out that that's an area that often does not receive lots of attention when we talked about innovation. But I would submit that the question of management of technologies and how to diffuse best practice, or even better, best fit practices, in the sense that those practices that are appropriate for the local environment, is a very important component. How do we explain the fact that you had, for instance, in the textile engine industry, so many industries in the fat tail of low productivity companies still operating in the market? Well, in part, competition, or, in other words, lack of competition in this case, because you had very high level of protection still in India, close to 50% tariffs in this area. You had problems, particularly in the context of family-owned companies, of constrained managerial control, very much linked also to poor rule of law. Labor really want to have a very dynamic market. So, all of this just to say something that I don't need to preach to this audience, that innovation is very important. Why it's important? Well, because in the end, if we are going to explain growth, we cannot explain sustained growth by increasing inputs like capital, labor, and even skills. You have to put in the mix, and typically studies show that almost 0.5% of increases, or for instance, cross-country difference in income per capita, are associated exactly to this issue that we are encapsulating under the concept of innovation. And public policies are very important because innovation has many aspects. Not only is risky, but there are significant externalities, and these externalities, for instance, the demonstration externalities, the importance of mavericks, of introduction of new ideas, the importance of clustering, and the possibilities that you have to address asymmetries in information, particularly from the point of view of the financial market. The innovator knows things that the financial market doesn't know, but how he shares this information, how he is able to put this on the table, it will be affected, for instance, by the intellectual property rights environment, and in any case, these are, as I already pointed out, risk initiatives.